Clear.
You can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm going to do a little introduction that comes at the top of all of our interviews, and then I'll ask you to introduce yourself, and I'll ask Susan to introduce herself so that we have all three voices, and our transcription software can identify us all. It's not foolproof, but it's pretty good. So, it's October 27th, 2023. I'm Pat McPherson. I'm here with my colleague Susan Creighton. We are creating an archive in concert with the Marlboro Morris Ale Organizing Committee to record the first, let's call it optimistically, the first 50 years of the Marlboro Morris Ale. We're talking today with Jan Elliott at her home in Woods Hole, Massachusetts. And the archive of the Marlboro Ale is going to reside at the Vermont Folklore Center, currently in Middlebury, Vermont, and also currently moving to Burlington, Vermont. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Jan Elliott, and what else do you need to know?
That's enough.
Okay.
Many things that we will be taking momentarily.
That's enough for just now.
Uh-huh.
And you want to say your name?
And I'm Susan Creighton, and I'm here along with my colleague Pat McPherson.
All right. Did you have a chance to look at our questions?
Barely.
There.
That's fine.
It's been an insane week,
No
especially
preparation is
today.
necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to start just by giving you an opportunity to talk about how you became aware of Morris dancing, whether you come from a family of music and dance or whether you just happened on it or not.
Speak louder, please.
Okay.
Use your teacher voice.
I'm
Don't move it. Just speak up loud.
I'm not a teacher.
Okay.
Okay. And then, what drew you to Morris, and then put that into the context of intersecting with the Marlboro Morris Ale.
Okay.
Okay? So,
First of all,
yes.
I love you guys, and it's great to talk to you.
Yay!
Thank you.
I want that on the record.
Fun to get to do. Yes.
We have collected so many wonderful stories about people's histories and why they love Morris, how they ended up at Marlboro. So do you want to tell us that part of your story?
Sure. The story of how I got involved in Morris is one that I've told before and that you have probably heard, but if you don't mind hearing it again.
Go for it.
I grew up mostly here in Woods Hole, and I got into dance after the sort of, ubiquitous ballet lessons.
Did you really?
From age 3, yeah,
Yeah.
with a wonderful teacher.
Yeah.
I started international folk dancing down at the Woods Hole Community Hall on Wednesday nights. It was year-round back then, and there were no kids, but my sisters, or one of my sisters, or my mom, all liked folk dancing, and so my memory is that they would babysit me and drag me down to folk dancing, and within a very short time I was dragging them.
Nice.
And my first ever paid job was programming and teaching at Wednesday night folk dancing in Woods Hole. It's still going in the summers, and now it is packed with kids. But I was the only kid back then, and I made some firm friends, some of whom I still see occasionally, which is really great. And there was a man there who taught English country dances in the midst of all the Balkan and Israeli dances, and his name was Bob Giard. He was married to Ruth Giard, my recorder teacher, with whom I had studied, again, since age 3. And
Really?
Bob used to teach us these country dances, ones you know, to recordings down in Community Hall. And he also used to lead a processional for the annual May Day parade, or May Festival, they called it. And it was on Memorial Day weekend, in fact. And so as a teenager, I remember getting into the parade, and in fact leading it with Bob as my partner, and he choreographed some very simple processional dance, and there's photographs of it somewhere. And then I saw his team, the Woods Hole Morris men.
Oh my goodness.
And I said, I want to do that. I was hanging out with one of his sons at the time, and stepsons, and at least one or two of them were on this team, along with some of the male Morris dancers. And he told me, you can't do Morris. It's not for girls. It's only for boys and men. But you can come watch as we rehearse. Yes.
This is the young fellow.
Face plant.
Yeah.
Young fellow?
It wasn't your friend or teacher Bob.
It was Bob.
Oh, it was Bob.
He was,
Okay.
getting on in years. He
Okay.
he was a generation at least ahead of me.
Okay.
So I can't remember if I ever watched them or just grumbled.
Yeah.
But he said, well, if you really want to learn Morris dancing, you should go to Pine Woods Camp. And he and his wife got me in, but I was not 1, not 2, but 4 years underage. You had to be 18, and I was 14. And it was apparently a real hard sell. And I had to bring my mom, and I did. She didn't love it. She preferred international folk dancing, and we snuck out on the Sunday night to go international folk dancing at MIT and came back to camp, and people looked at us like we had 3 heads.
Yes.
You did what? You don't leave
You
camp.
told people. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. that
a
was a mistake.
Just telling you.
And my mom didn't love it. She found it very cliquey. But she was also kind of a wallflower as far as partner dances go. I was 14. I was just agog and aglow with everything. I wanted to learn everything. And guess who was there in 1974?
Who? Tony Barron.
He was there, but that's not who I'm talking about. Thank you, honey.
And
She was definitely there.
Fred Brunet.
Yes, he was my mom's
Shaw.
country DJ. Pat Shaw.
Oh, really?
My
Oh,
introduction to Morris dancing was from Pat Shaw.
Oh my goodness.
And sword dancing and country dancing.
No wonder you
Yeah.
got the bug.
Yeah, I got bit hard.
Yeah.
So that was that. And the coda to that story is that Bob and Ruth wanted to sponsor me the following year so I could go back to camp because my mom didn't want to go. But the powers that be said no. If it's not a parent, if it's not the person's parent, she can't go. So I had to wait till I was 18. And then, because of gender balancing, I was waitlisted. I was waitlisted for years.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, it's crazy. But meanwhile, I learned Headington from Pat Shaw with the red, white, and blue Morris sticks, which you may or may not remember from camp. They're still there.
Oh my.
And danced with the likes of Tony and John Dexter, Shag Gretz,
Yeah.
Howard Lasnik, all those guys.
Yeah.
And we learned Papa Store. We had an amazing time. So from there, I heard about the Marlboro Morris Ale, and I can't remember how I first heard, but if you go to Pine Woods, you hear such things.
Yeah.
By then, it's probably 1975 or 76. There's a
Yeah.
team in Marlboro. As I'm sure you know, it started as a mixed team
Yes.
for about a year.
Yeah.
And then it went into a joint team,
Right.
and then it finally split later, about a decade later. But there was this new team, and there was this new idea for an ale. And from what I heard, Tony wanted it to be a competition.
Initially, yes.
Initially, he wanted it to be a competition in the English style,
Yeah.
and there was mutiny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been boycotted from the word go.
yeah.
So he took out the competition aspect and invited, I think, all the Morris teams there were at the
Right.
time.
Right.
And I didn't go to that first ale, but I went the next year. as a spectator, 1977. Yeah.
Okay.
And you weren't on it. Were you on a team by then?
I was not on a team. The only
You were not even 18 yet.
I was not 18 yet. No.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But my boyfriend had a car and wanted to go, and we went as spectators and had a fantastic time. And he took amazing photos, and I can't find the album. I'm so bummed.
Oh.
I assume I will find it someday
Yeah.
and that I will share it with you.
Yeah.
Wow.
He's
Okay.
a way better photographer and had a way better camera. However, in 1978, I went back, and at this point, I had been taking classes at the Cambridge YWCA through the Boston Center,
Yeah.
CDS Boston, and so I had learned a little different traditions, some mass dances, and when I went in 78, my friend Barbara Blair also went. We shared a pair of Morris bells.
Blair.
Oh, not Barbara Blair. Barbara Ben, another BB.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim. And Barbara Ben and I got the idea of starting a team. So there's a picture. These are really not very good pictures from 1978, but for photographic evidence, this is the beginning of Hey Penny Morris. It's Barbara Ben looking for a mass dance that she could step into, and she's wearing one bell pad.
Wow.
And I had the other. And in October of that year, 1978, no, sorry. I'm collecting my thoughts. You know, obviously some of this will be retracted. It was in February of 1978 that we wanted to get a team together, and there's a reason for that, which I will tell you in a moment. And then this picture is from a few months later.
So May 78.
May 78 is when this picture was taken.
Okay.
February 78 was when we had our very first meeting. But I feel like I'm a year off. So maybe I can straighten this out.
Okay.
Okay. And October of 78 was when we had our first dance out as Hey Penny Morris.
When was the blizzard?
Can I ask?
78. 70.
Yes.
February.
78.
February. And that is when Hey Penny first met, in the blizzard. Yeah. Can you ask?
Yes. A brief digression into the founding of Hey Penny.
Mm-hmm.
Was Martha Nolan anywhere in the mix here? And
Yes.
was Kari anywhere in the mix here?
No.
Okay.
But Martha Roberts was one of the
yes.
6 original Hey Penny.
Oh, no kidding. We just interviewed her a few weeks ago.
Oh, I love it. Did she mention Hey Penny?
Yes.
Good.
Her name is
Absolutely.
Martha Roberts Nolan now.
Her-
Are we talking about the same?
Talking about the
Martha
same
Nolan.
person. She's on
Rock Creek.
DC, Rock Creek.
Okay.
Yeah. And still a fabulous dancer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She was a Harvard student at the
Yes,
time.
That's right. Yeah.
And she got us into Strauss Hall in Harvard Yard, and that's where we practiced.
Nice.
And when she graduated, we continued to practice there because we figured out how to climb in a window. And then finally they were on to us and kicked us out. But
Marvelous.
the founding of Hey Penny came about let's see. Again, this is the fuzzy part of the timeline,
Sure,
so I'm
yeah.
going to say some things and take them back probably. But
Yeah.
I was studying at, I was in high school at Buckingham Brown and Nichols in
Yeah.
Cambridge at the time. We'd moved up here when I was a junior, and I had my junior and senior year. And the final term, spring term of your senior year, you didn't have to go to class if you wrote a proposal for an internship or a study program or something that was accepted. And my proposal involved several things: apprenticing an instrument maker, working at the Music Emporium, which was in Porter Square at the
Yes.
time, and joining Muddy River, the new women's Morris team in Boston.
Oh.
And they were full.
Oh, no.
They were full. They said to Barbara, Ben, and me, "Oh, we have room for one person, but not for 2 people.
That's weird.
And you guys," yeah, tell me about it. you guys have some experience, right? And you're musicians, right? So here's our waiting list. Form another team. And then they picked somebody who wasn't either of us. And that person didn't stay.
Oh, no.
So, maybe that's a certain kind of justice. But
Yes.
but Barbara and I worked with that waiting list from Muddy River. And it was Martha Roberts. It was Barbara. It was me. It was Barbara Cannon, Canon, who lived in the house with Barbara Blair, just southeast of Harvard Square. And Jackie Chew, Chew, who was on Hearts of Oak. And Diana Lawry, Lawry, who was on Northampton Morris. There was a Northampton Morris.
In Western Mass?
They wore yellow vests. I know nothing else about them.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep.
Okay.
And Martha Roberts' sister, Sally, may have been there as well. And she was on the team for a little while, but didn't stick around. Okay, so that was Muddy River's waiting list, and that started Haypenny.
Great.
And let's see, where do we go from there? Haypenny were invited to the ale in 1980. So I was trying to, I should get my, a little timeline I wrote on my computer. I'll get it in a second. But I think I went back in 1979, which was, I believe, the last year that mixed teams were invited to the ale. And the ale was huge that year. It was sort of unmanageable.
Yeah.
And then they had to bring the hammer down on something. And Tony decided it was mixed gender, because he really didn't like mixed gender dancing. Mm-hmm. And I could talk about that a lot. But Haypenny were invited in 1980. And I remember there's footage out there, which I'm sure you have, of all the early ales from Tony's videos.
His videos are at Library of Congress.
Okay.
And this collection will link to that one, but they're not in our possession. Yeah.
The VHS videos?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I have copies of all of them up until 90 or 91 upstairs.
Okay.
This was for my master's thesis.
Yeah. Okay.
I spent the whole summer going and copying his videos. However, do I have a VHS player? No, they break really easily.
Yeah.
Plastic capstans and things like that. Clunk. You just can't get them. So I still have a small television set with an integral VHS player, and I can still play them on that.
Yeah.
But what I remember is that I started Haypenny and then went away to college. So I really know very little about the early years. But I did come to Marlboro in 1980, and I was amazed, not in a good way, at how fast they danced.
Yeah.
Everyone or just your team?
Everyone, but especially my team. Yeah.
Oh.
And there's something else I want to get upstairs. Can I get both things now?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, have fun. You have to look closely because they're so bad.
Oh. Are you on again?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yep.
Tell me about you as a dancer, you as a musician.
Okay.
Were you moving back and forth? Did you have one role, two roles? Were you also teaching? What?
Oh, God. It was complicated. And in fact, I wrote my master's thesis. I'm holding my last copy that I know of, and I thought I knew where the figures were.
Wonderful.
But I'll find them. Based on my experience in the 80s, returning from college and being both the leader and the musician, both the foreman and the musician for Haypenny Morris.
Complicated.
Foreman and musician. Bad combo, because
Hard to do.
I could never dance to what I wanted the music to be.
Yeah.
And when I played, I never had the dancer that I wanted in front of me.
You couldn't demonstrate what you had in your head.
I couldn't demonstrate to
Yeah.
music. That's
Yeah.
right. And I remember one time, Meg Ryan, who became Squire, there was some week that I wasn't going to be able to make practice. And since I was the musician, how are they going to practice without me? And Meg and I were roommates at the time, and we got the brilliant idea of her dancing in front of me while I played the tune, and recorded it on presumably a cassette recorder. And we did this, and it was so much fun, and her dancing was great, and I was pulling and pushing on the tune and doing everything I needed to do. And after practice, whenever I came back from where I was, I said, "How did practice go? How did the cassette go?" And she said, "Oh, we hummed. We totally couldn't use it. It just didn't work for what was going on Monday night with all the dancers dancing. It was not the same as Meg dancing solo for me. And it was so far from that they couldn't use the cassette at all.
Wow.
And they had to just diddle the tune.
What instrument were you playing?
Concertina.
Concertina, okay.
Yeah.
Had your skill in playing for dancing sort of developed as you were learning about the dancing?
I learned about the dancing first, but I was interested in all kinds of music from international folk dancing. I became interested in Balkan singing and various forms of music. And so concertina fit right into that. I was also really into Irish music by then. Mm-hmm. And concertina fit right into that. Mm-hmm. So after buying a concertina and having it stolen, my Lachenal Idiophone, beautiful concertina.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. From Brigham's in Harvard Square. Mark Baker drove me back 10 minutes to my house, and I went, "Oh, I don't have my concertina." We went back to Brigham's. Gone. They knew nothing about it. So that was that. I took my bereaved self to college, to Wesleyan University, and I had visited England just before going to Wesleyan, and stopped in, as someone suggested I do, at Crabbe in Islington, North London. And I had spoken to Neville Crabbe. What a wonderful name. And I said, "Do you have any good used concertinas? I had an Idiophone, it was stolen, blah, blah, blah." He said, We don't have any right now. We usually do, but we don't." So he said, "If you give me £400, I'll make sure that the next worthy instrument goes to you." And I went to the bank. I don't even remember how I got £400, which was $800 at the time.
Yeah.
And I handed it to him, and I walked out and went,
What have I
Just
done?
This is called trust.
"Oh man, this is called insanity." So then I went away to Wesleyan, and a letter came to my dorm about 3 months later, and it was from Neville, and he said, "We think you'll be pleased."
Oh, hooray, Neville.
And it was that concertina in the gray case, and it is the delight of my life.
Oh, my.
It's like the best concertina I've ever played.
He came through for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so by then I was really dying to play more concertina, and then I just never stopped.
Wow.
So that's that. Little tiny piece to that story, preamble. I came to the concertina by following a Morris tour of the New Cambridge Morris Men in Harvard Square, with playing by Roger Cartwright.
Yeah.
And he had with him a glass-buttoned Lachenal. This was before I ever got my Lachenal. He had a gorgeous-looking concertina. And he let me play it in the pub, which was, what was the pub in Harvard Square where they all went? And they managed to score a back room to themselves and sing and carouse and do all that. It's going to come to me sometime. And then it turned into like a Chili's restaurant or something.
Oh, no.
And I sat and I put that concertina on my lap, and he showed me how it worked. And out came the tune I had been working on, the Irish tune I had been working on, the Blarney Pilgrim jig. Not an easy tune. And I'd been working on it on, I had a lot of instruments, guitar, penny whistle, maybe bouzouki or something, and it just, there it was on the concertina just waiting to be played. And that's what hooked me on concertina.
Wow.
It worked with my brain.
Yeah.
So not for everybody, and it's an English concertina, by the way.
English style.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you said at some point, I'm going to start playing for this dancing.
Yeah. By then I was really into Morris. It was 1978.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get myself one of these, and I'm gonna play for Morris and everything else. So that was how I came to be the Morris musician.
So we have you in Haypenny
Mm-hmm.
coming to Marlboro for the first time. Do you want to talk about that experience?
Sure, there's
For
not
you,
that much to
For
say.
you and for your team.
It was 1980, and I was in the middle of my college years, and I was down at Wesleyan, and I had started a short-lived team down there called Mattabesset Morris. That is the Native American name for Middletown, Connecticut.
Nice.
So I can't remember how to spell it, but you can look it up.
We'll look it up.
And I'd brought a friend from Middletown, and I'd forgotten my halfpenny vest, and that was sad because I couldn't dance in the set with a vest on, which is what I really wanted to do. And they switched around vests a couple times, but mostly I didn't dance. And as I said, I was sort of appalled at how fast they danced. That's what led me to this, and I think, figures.
You are holding a copy of your master's thesis.
I am holding a copy of my master's thesis. Here we go. Oh, it's 202, not 102. Okay.
And you are looking for...
I am looking for what I call... Oh, that's different. I want to show you that too. But what's the other figure? 142. Okay. This is a chart I made of tempos at the Marlboro Morris Ale. Perhaps a sort of a piece of gold for your project.
Would you be willing to share that with us?
Of course I would.
That would be fascinating.
Of course I would.
Yeah.
And they went down over time. It doesn't look like a lot,
Yeah.
by 10 clicks. Yeah, from
That's noticeable. Yeah.
86 to 76.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there was one year where there's no video of the college show, and so I substituted the Newfane show, and it was hugely faster than the college show. It was like everybody was tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what you really see in this graph.
Yeah.
Is this huge jump here. It's like, what's going on here?
Right.
So a little hash, which looks like a dot this small, is occurrence of at least one team dancing at this tempo.
Okay.
The double star here is the average of all the tempos. And there's double hashes for teams that visited from England.
Oh.
And they are always at the bottom.
Look at that. Significantly
Windsor.
lower.
More Windsor somewhere. Jorix. I had to expand the chart.
Way down at the bottom.
Yeah,
Very
I remember them telling me their aim is to dance as slowly as is humanly possible,
slow. Oh my.
and it was indeed.
Wow.
So that's what I wanted to show you, was the average tempos. And in 1977, which was the year that I first came as a spectator, there was a team, and Rhett was on this team, and they danced at 114 beats a minute, which is almost not humanly possible. You know the little cartoons where people are running and their legs are like little pinwheels?
Yeah.
That's what it looked like.
Was this Putnam Ring?
Nope, it was Greenwich Guard.
Oh, Greenwich Guard.
Yeah.
Oh, they came back actually as, yeah.
Rapper Fest is good.
Okay.
Morris Fest is funny.
Yeah.
And they were just like, jump, 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 jump. They were doing Bleddington, and you could hardly see it. It went by so fast.
Oh, good heavens.
So there it is, recorded. That had 1977 had the widest spread of tempos, I think, of any year.
Wow.
Okay, so artifact number 1
Interesting.
or number 2,
So, Masters was at BU?
UCLA.
I thought that was your PhD. Oh, okay.
I don't have a PhD.
Oh,
I have
thought
I
you
have
got a PhD
what
at
they call
UCLA.
a
Okay.
terminal master's.
Ah,
I love that
okay.
that word.
That was the
It'll
end
get
of
it'll
Jan.
it'll kill you in the end, one way or another. No, I went and I checked in with Tony on the advice of friends, and I found by talking to him that he had a lot of great ideas that he wanted me to put into action and write a thesis about, and that wasn't what I wanted to do. It was a different topic,
Yeah.
and I felt like I couldn't really do it myself
Right.
if I was there. So I was glad I checked it out, but I didn't end up at BU. And I also checked out England. I checked out a program at Sheffield.
Yes. That
and
would be the place to go.
The guy there said the program was in decline, and he just didn't sound very positive at all.
Oh,
Was this in music or anthropology or
Folklore,
okay?
I think.
Okay.
Folklore studies.
Yeah.
Cindy Shagru. Speaking of Kari, this was a mutual friend of Kari's. Sugrue.
I think we asked Kari the same thing.
Okay. Had studied there
Yeah.
at Sheffield. So I thought maybe I'd follow. But nope, I ended up at UCLA, and it was the perfect place.
Great.
Colin Quigley was
Oh, I know.
former
Yes.
Greenwich Morrisman.
Oh.
Had just gotten a job in the dance department there, and he was
Wow.
my advisor. And I taught a class in Morris and Sword, and he played for it, and it was
Wonderful.
great. So that was in 1990. So back to the 80s at the Ale. There's
First
not
time with your new team.
yes, 1980,
Yeah.
and I didn't have my vest, and so it doesn't have great memories for me.
Yeah.
Oh.
They went back in 1983. I didn't go with them. I spent 5 years in college as an undergraduate, getting a BA and a teaching certificate. And they went in 1983 and did Oddington, which they had learned from Pinewoods, from Chris Walker. And boy, they looked just like Chris Walker. It was fast, and it was snappy, and it was low to the ground. And the hands were, like Bacon says, from out at the side to in front of the eyes. You know, right?
Yeah.
And it looked great, and people loved it. Then I think we didn't get invited back to the Ale till 1987. By then, we had redeveloped Oddington and really made something out of it. In large part due to the input of Cynthia Weir, who was sort of coaching us and playing for us. And she played for us in the college show in 1987, and you can hear the response, even when it's quiet. It's amazing. I watched that video so many times. We did Oddington Old Frog, and Jan Elliott and I were middles, and we both did really high leapers, and the audience went wild. And we were there. We were on the scoreboard, you know.
Yeah.
It was a really great feeling, and Cynthia played for that. So that was the beginning of our new Oddington, Halfpenny Oddington, which is, I think, all the team does now.
That is the tradition I associate with Halfpenny.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we developed that through the mid-'80s and brought it to Marlboro in 87. And we came back in 88 and maybe in 89. I don't remember, but then it wasn't new.
Yeah.
Did you stay on the team?
Yes. Yes, that was when I was foreman and musician at the same time. And we have had other musicians. I'm sure we've had other foremen, like when I was in college. Probably Jan Elliott, that would be my guess. Strong dancer.
Yeah.
I want to show you another chart sometime. She features in it.
How high you jump?
More or less.
Oh, okay.
Can I do it now?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I was intrigued with what made a great dancer great. And I knew it had something to do with bigness and looseness in the air. But since I was writing my thesis on the relationship between music and dance in Morris, which was great after being foreman and musician,
Yeah.
I wondered what it was about the leap. Was it the highest leap? Was it the leap that spent the longest time in the air? I had these sort of assumptions, and I quickly got rid of them once I started doing video analysis. 202, 202, 202. So here's my very rugged little graph of 3 occurrences of a group jumping in the air. And the top one, I think, is Halfpenny. And Jan Elliott was definitely considered the best dancer on the team. She's the 3rd one down. The second one is Tony Barrand doing Litchfield I-95 with the Marlboro Classics, as we call them now.
Yeah.
And there he is.
Yeah.
And the last one is Tim's team, Kirtlington.
Oh, yeah.
And this is Tim, but this is his buddy Tim Lawton, who's across from him.
Ah.
And the thing that was the same always about the best dancer was the ratio of airtime to time spent in the takeoff, the preparation.
Say that again. The ratio?
The ratio of airtime
Yeah.
to time spent in the takeoff, on the ground preparing to leap. It was the explosiveness of the jump.
Cool. Ah.
And that wasn't what I expected at all.
So you wanted a very short amount of time in the takeoff and a lot of time in the air.
By comparison. That's
High
right.
ratio. Yeah.
That's right. And it was not the person who landed last. You know, it wasn't anything like that. But it was the difference between the dark line and the light line.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
interesting.
Strong feet, powerful feet, and knowing how to use them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also showmanship.
That too. And other things. I mean, Will Fielding used to talk about curving your back, looking up. All those things are
Open.
good. Yeah. Yeah, that sort of chest forward kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely had to do with showmanship. But it was the power in the feet and the lower legs
Right.
that allowed you to do your steps and then hit the ground and explode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was cool. That was sort of worth the price of admission, you know.
Yeah, most definitely.
Getting that thesis done.
Given this background of yours, which is part musical, part analytical, you know, and just joyful, what do you think about the Marlboro Ale? Is it in one of my questions, is it a social gathering for people to like meet again and feel like they're part of a larger whole? Is it a place where people exchange information?
It's a
What's
place
your
where people influence each other.
What's your take?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think it's kind of a competition in disguise. I hope Tony would be glad to hear that.
Yes, I think so too. Yeah.
There is definitely a competitive aspect to
Yes.
Marlboro, even if there's no judging and no prizes.
Because there's an audience.
Yeah, there's an audience of your peers, and
Yes.
then there's an audience of, you know, in downtown Brattleboro.
Yeah.
And then at New Fane, a different audience yet again, sort of knowledgeable
Yes.
spectators.
Right.
So that's kind of what I think Marlboro is. The social aspect is really important. But dancing your very best is, I think, the most important.
And why do people do assume that you have to dance your very best because fill in the blank.
Or you have to be silly. And if you get a reputation for doing silly things, you can totally get away with that.
Yes.
Newtown being an example.
Yes.
Yeah? But people assume they have to do their best dancing because really good teams are there and individuals are there who you want to impress.
Yes.
That's personal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? like with a lot of performances, my other foot is in early music, and I feel that way too. I got a big concert tomorrow for which I had the dress rehearsal just before coming home. And I played some clams, and I don't want to play them tomorrow. I want everything to wow the audience. It's just a feeling. Right. It's just a feeling that you get. But it's magnified, I think, in a good way by being in a set with your teammates and doing a dance that you know and love as your show dance. Mm-hmm. Mostly when I'm dancing, or before I got old, when I was dancing, my mind would be on flying, would be on those moments when you're flying through the air. And you're not just doing that, but there's this fabulous music, if you're lucky. You're with 5 other people, or you're doing a corner crossing with 1 other person, which I really love. And there's all that energy transference between the 2 of you. Remember I said when Marlboro started mixed? Mm-hmm. Apparently they were mixed, but all the men were in one line and all the women were in another line. And that meant for corner dances, all the corners were male-female pairs. And apparently the men got tired of it. Mm. They wanted to mix energy with another man rather than a woman. I think
that's pretty fascinating.
It is.
I can't remember who gave me that tidbit.
Yeah.
It was a member of the team.
Yeah.
It fits with other things we've been told about the beginnings of that team.
Mm-hmm.
And about wanting to dance similarly.
Mm-hmm.
And
Now, jumping ahead a little to Thames.
That's what
dancing
I was
with.
just about to ask.
Oh, good.
As you were describing that,
My
I had
timing is
images
impeccable.
of you dancing with Thames.
Well,
How did that come about?
Dancing with Thames actually started in 1988 at the Toronto Morris Ale when I was up there. I can't even remember who I was up there with. Yeah. I honestly can't. Maybe it'll come to me. But Thames danced beautifully. They were a new hip team. They were young back then. They were strong. Paul was still dancing. I think Paul was still dancing.
Paul
Hanford.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, Alistair Brown invited me into their set late on the Sunday night. At the end of the ale, they went out in the street and they did a dance. And I remember it was Fieldtown Trunkles, which I didn't know very well, but I did it and I had a great time. And then they gave me a Grotty card, Grotty, generic ringers of Thames through the years, right? And I was not the only Grotty, but I was very proud of my card. And I didn't dance with them in 1989, but in 1990 they went to England, and I was invited. All the Grotties were invited.
Lovely.
And 3 Grotties came, and I was the only female who came on the tour. And then I got my prick card.
Of course you did.
Performing regularly incorrect kit. And I think the card is still in my wallet somewhere. I'll be careful when I pull out my driver's license. Yes, officer. Oh, sorry, not that one.
Don't look at that one.
I'm really not.
I remember because there
Not
was
you,
a
officer.
place in the corner. And they said a photo of the member goes there, but in your case, your face will have to do. So they were just full of shit like that, and they were so much fun to be with. And being the only woman meant that I was engaging in the male energy transference.
Yeah.
And I wrote a paper about this, which actually got published.
Called?
Gender blending.
Mm-hmm.
And what was amazing about that is that I'm from a family of all women, and so I'm used to being comfortable in that environment. And even though it was a dance and a team that was all male, I found that my identity was subsumed. My identity as a female was subsumed in my identity as a dancer, a Thames dancer. Mm-hmm. And while I didn't become not female, which wasn't even a thing back then, it didn't matter. I didn't think about the fact that I was female and I was dancing with men. It just didn't have a place in my brain when I was dancing. It was just us. It was just us together. Me in my corner or me in my set or whatever. And I remember having a conversation at one point with Will Fielding, who was on Thames, and who was, I believe, not really in favor of mixed sets. I don't know how he felt about women dancing, period, but not too keen on mixed sets, and there were several members of Thames who felt that way. And I stayed with him and Paula at one point. We had a chance for a conversation, and he said, he echoed Tony, what I'd heard Tony say, in that the body types are so different that you can't look alike. You can't match each other. And then I thought, well, what about a kid in the set? What about a black person in the set? Now make that black person number one, calling the dances. What happens to your brain then? And that also got into my brain when I was writing that paper about gender blending, because you see what you habitually see. And for Tony, there's a quote from his book, Six Fools and a Dancer, that talks about men and women dancing and why you shouldn't have mixed sets. And he says very boldly, men banging sticks together means one thing, and women banging sticks together means another thing. And men banging sticks together with women is a completely different thing, and goes all the way back to the courtship struggles of Adam and Eve. Sounds emanating from the next room.
Yes.
And that is how he felt. So when he saw mixed dancing, that is what he saw. Mm-hmm. He couldn't see cohesion in the set if there were men and women. He couldn't get beyond that habitual pattern of seeing gender first and foremost in dancing. And Will was of that opinion as well.
And these are all these opinions about needing to have unity in style and shape and size in a set. That is, without saying, in this conversation, your goal. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And it was Tim, who's quoted in my thesis, who said, what was it? I tend to notice, I could find it, but it would take a minute. I tend to notice the cohesion of the set before I notice individual personnel, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that what came out first for him when he was watching Thames.
Yeah.
Whereas for Tony, I'm not sure which team he had in mind, but the gender, the sexual differences, and the sexual tension was in front of everything when he saw Morris done by men and women together. Unless perhaps it was patterned, as it was at the beginning of the Marlboro team.
Right.
Now, a slight diversion. You guys danced Morris, both of you, yes? You never did. You danced with Guiding Star.
Yes.
And who else?
My very first Cotswold team was Fiddler's Reach Morris.
Oh, of course. I forgot you were on Fiddler's Reach. There's a picture of them in there.
For a couple of years of Cotswold and a little bit of Longsword.
Okay.
Before my niece said, "Oh dear, no."
Oh no. With Deb Small.
Guiding Star,
mm-hmm.
Yes, and Longwood Rapper. And
you were the only woman?
I would love to talk with you further off interview about being the only woman dancing on a men's rapper sword team.
How interesting. I'd love to talk to you about that.
This gender balancing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This this experience of losing my gendered nature
Yes.
in the dance was so cool. And the second you recognize it, it's gone. The second you can identify that you felt it, it's left
You
you.
become aware of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would be happy to give you a copy
Much
of my
to talk
paper.
about there. I would love it.
I was not allowed to dance with Thames at the Ale. We were going, this is 1990, we were going to England, and because they were Canadian, I had no opportunity to meet with them. I had that one grotty experience.
Yes.
And
Right.
I was like, how am I going to practice with you guys? And this was the summer before I wrote my thesis, and I was up and down the stairs. I took all 6 flights of stairs to get in shape up to Tony's office to copy his videos. You know, the people in the building thought I was nuts. And I was preparing to go to England with Thames, wondering how on earth I was going to learn their dances. And so I had my heart set on dancing with them at Marlboro, which is kind of silly because I hadn't been practicing their dances. But so it's funny, he got to 1990. That's where I'm getting at.
We
but it was a big year.
definitely need a second conversation
Good.
with each one of you because
I'm glad.
full of more questions that are still unanswered. But
And things
go ahead.
bring up other things, as I'm sure
Yes.
happens with everyone you interview.
Yes, absolutely.
But but I couldn't dance with them because I was female, and that just happened to be when Tim was over and we connected. So he saw me dance on the Friday night when we could still be in the music shed. That's one of my favorite memories of Marlboro, was being in the
Many
music shed
people
on Friday night.
mention that fondly.
Really, really
the
good.
time in the music shed.
Yep.
The fact
And-
that we drank the weekend's beer on the first night is relevant.
We being Kirtlington.
Carrington.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm sure
You'll
he's...
have to repeat that because it won't come out on the.
They drank the weekend's beer the first night.
Thank you.
Which he says is completely irrelevant, which means that he thinks it's very relevant. But I remember getting into kit on the Sunday to travel. Kirtlington and Marlboro Morris and Sword and Thames were all on the same tour. And I got into kit and I was so excited. And it was Andy, it was my dear friend, who came back to the back of my car, I was putting my kit on, and said, "No, you can't. It won't work." And that led to a lot of personal angst about the ale
Yeah.
while I was on the team, but I couldn't dance at the ale. I could dance everywhere else, but not at the Marlboro Morris Ale. And the struggle to get beyond that took several years, and I will be happy to talk about that next time.
All right.
All right.
Okay, let's just leave that at that
Part two.
interesting
Oh
spot.
boy.
Wow.
Okay. Oh, it's only 3.